Welcome to the second lecture on diffraction of light. In this video, we will going to see Fraunhofer diffraction due to a single slit. Before proceeding to this video, I would request you please watch the previous video in this lecture series which was on Introduction to Diffraction of Light. Let me start this video with a question: what is Fraunhofer diffraction? As I discussed in my previous lecture that if your object and screen both at infinite distance from the diffracting element, then the observed diffraction pattern will be of Fraunhofer diffraction type. And we have also seen that plane wavefronts is involved in Fraunhofer diffraction. So let's suppose we have a plane wavefront AB which is of a monochromatic light of wavelength lambda and frequency omega. This plane wavefront is coming from an object which is situated at infinite distance from your slit. Okay, so this is a slit. Slit is nothing but a small narrow opening, right? And now just place your screen so that we can observe the diffraction pattern on this screen. Okay. Now, according to Fraunhofer diffraction pattern, this screen must be at the infinite distance from the slit. So how we can do that? Let's place a convex lens in between such that the screen will be at the focal plane of this convex lens. In that way, we can ensure that the screen will be at the infinite distance. Now, according to Huygens principle, this plane wavefront incidenting on this slit and each point in this slit can be source of secondary wavelet, right? Any secondary wavelet traveling normal to this slit are brought focus at point C, right? Any wavelet traveling normal, that is parallel to this line OC, will fall on this convex lens and it will brought focus at a point C. And any other wavelet which is supposed traveling with an angle theta, like indicated by this three ray diagram, are brought focus to a point Q. Okay, this is initial setup. Now we require to proceed further that we need to calculate the path difference between the light coming from a point O and the light coming from the point P. Let's suppose that this light coming from a point O and this light coming from a point P. And this point P belongs to a diffracting element. Let's suppose we consider a very small diffracting element dx. So this P is situated in that dx element. Okay. So this is our initial setup and the initial schematic diagram. Now move further. As this light is moving with an angle theta with the line OC, then from the knowledge of geometry we know that if this angle is theta, this angle must be theta, that is the angle PON must be theta, right? Now just move further. So keep that diagram here so that we can do our mathematical calculation. The very first question, what we want to calculate? We want to calculate the intensity of the light which is falling on this screen. So let's calculate the intensity of light at point Q. Then by changing this angle, we can calculate the intensity of light on this whole screen, right? So we will proceed one by one. So what will be the disturbance at point Q due to light coming from point O? As we know, the light is of wave nature and any wave can be represented as A e to the power I omega t minus kx, right? Where kx is a phase part introduced due to the space. Now as we are observing the disturbance at particular point, let's say it's a Q, then space part is constant. Therefore the complex light disturbance at point Q will be A e to the power I omega t. We can absorb that constant, that is e to the power minus I kx, which is also a constant because x is fixed here, in this constant A. So the complex light disturbance at point Q, any instant light to coming from O will be A e to the power I omega t. Now the next question is, what will be the complex light disturbance at point Q due to light coming from this point P? How we can do that? As we can see, there is a path difference between these two lights. So this path difference will introduce a phase difference. So we just need to incorporate that phase difference, and then we can easily calculate the complex light disturbance at point Q due to light coming from point P. We know the phase difference is 2 pi by lambda times path difference. And here from this triangle we can easily see the path difference is Pn, right? So the phase difference will be 2 pi by lambda into Pn, and this Pn we can calculate by using this triangle. Suppose distance of P from O is x, then this Pn will be x sine theta because this angle is theta. So 2 pi by lambda x sine theta, which is equals to Lx, where L is 2 pi by lambda sine theta. So what is the phase difference? Phase difference is Lx. So now we are in the position to write the complex light disturbance at point Q at any instant due to light coming from P. It will be proportional to e to the power I omega t minus Lx. We have just introduced this phase difference in this term, okay? So e to the power I omega t minus Lx, okay? This is the complex disturbance at Q due to light coming from P. Then what will be the complex light disturbance at point Q due to light coming from this diffracting element dx? It's very easy guess. Larger the area, more will be the disturbance. That means the disturbance will be proportional to that dx as well as this term which we have already calculated, that is disturbance due to P. Therefore, the resultant disturbance at Q at any instant due to light coming from element dx will be represented as dy, which will be equals to k, which is a proportionality constant, a e to the power I omega t minus Lx times dx. Now the main question, what will be the complex light disturbance at Q due to whole slit? Suppose that the slit width is A and O is center, then from O to downward we have A by 2 and from above we have A by 2. Okay, O is center, total width of slit is A. So how we can do it? Just integrate it over whole x. Total disturbance at Q will be y integration from minus A by 2 to plus A by 2 a e to the power I omega t minus Lx dx, where A is slit width, right? We have calculated our final term, just we need to solve it in order to calculate the intensity pattern, okay? And how we can calculate the intensity pattern at all the points? Just by varying this theta, right? So if you vary this theta, this position Q will vary, and in that way we can calculate the disturbance at any point, okay? So this is disturbance at any point Q, which is due to the light coming with an angle theta, okay? So just solve it. We just need to solve it. So in order to solve, as this integration is on dx, we can easily take out the time dependent part, and a and small k is constant. So k a e to the power I omega t came outside, and we have integration over minus a to plus a e to the power I Lx dx. Just integrate it. It's a simple integration, and just substitute the limit, you will get this term. Look at this numerator. What is this? This is e to the power minus ILA upon 2 minus e to the power ILA upon 2. Do you remember the relation between sine theta and exponential term? We know e to the power I theta minus e to the power minus I theta is equals to 2I sine theta. Just use that idea and replace this numerator in sine term. So we will have y equals to Ka, and we just introduce a small a outside so that we can make La here, right? And if you replace this numerator by minus 2i sine La by 2, then I and I will cancel with this, minus sign will cancel with this, and 2 we will take that 2 in the denominator. That is, we can write this term as La by 2. This is the complex light disturbance. In order to calculate the intensity, what is intensity? Intensity is y times its complex conjugate. So if you do that, you will get I is equals to I naught sine square alpha upon alpha square, where I naught is Ka small a whole square and alpha is La by 2. So this is the final form of intensity. So at any point on the screen, if you want to calculate the intensity, then alpha is your variable. because alpha depends upon L depends upon theta. If theta will vary, L will change, as a result alpha will change. So alpha is our parameter which decides the intensity at each point, right? Now we got the intensity. Now it's time to calculate condition for maxima and minima. Because we know the diffraction pattern consists of bands of bright and dark region. If we find out the condition for maxima and minima, it will be very easy to understand the whole diffraction pattern. And we know alpha is a variable term here. So to calculate the maxima and minima, we need to take di d alpha equals to 0. This is our general idea. To find out maxima and minima, first derivative should be 0. If you do that, you will find out sin alpha equals to 0 or tan alpha equals to alpha. This will be the condition of maxima or minima depending upon another condition. If you apply that condition, that is second derivative of I with respect to alpha is greater than 0, that means it will indicate the minima. If you try to verify it, you will find out that sin alpha equals to 0 will satisfy this condition. So we can write sin alpha equals to 0 is a condition for minima. Similarly, tan alpha equals to alpha will be a condition for maxima, because for tan alpha equals to alpha, you will find out d2i d alpha square is less than 0. So now we got the condition for minima and maxima. So let's simplify it in terms of theta, because theta is our actual parameter. Okay. Condition for minima, sin alpha equals to 0. What it means? It means alpha must be integer multiple of pi, right? So we can write alpha equals to m pi, where m is equals to plus minus 1, plus minus 2, plus minus 3, and so on. And here we haven't chosen alpha equals to 0, that is m equals to 0. Why? Because when alpha tends to 0, sin alpha by alpha will be maximum. Okay. Alpha equals to 0 is condition for maxima, not the minima. We will see that. Okay. So when alpha equals to m pi, just substitute the value of alpha, which is La by 2, and then substitute the value of L, which is 2 pi by lambda sine theta. Then you will get A sine theta is equals to m lambda. This is very important formula for this topic. As I said that m equals to 0 is not considered because it will be the condition of principal maxima. Condition for diffraction minima is A sine theta equals to m lambda, where m decides the order number. If m equals to 1, then it will be first diffraction minima. If m equals to 2, it will be second diffraction minima, and so on. Okay. Now move to maxima condition. As we know, tan alpha equals to alpha is a condition for maxima, but this is a transcendental equation. So it means we cannot solve it analytically. A better way to deal with the transcendental equation is the graphical method. To do that, we need to just plot two curves, which is y equals to tan alpha and y equals to alpha. Here y is not light disturbance, it's just a common term y. Okay. If you plot it down, you will find the curve like this. So these curvy plots are for the tan alpha, we all know. And this straight line passing through 0 is y equals to alpha. Any point of intersection on these two plots will be the solution. Here you can easily check. Alpha equals to 0 is the first intersection point. Therefore, we can say that alpha equals to 0 is a condition for maxima, and that will be the condition for principal maxima. Okay. So the next intersection point is something around 3 pi by 2. It's not exactly 3 pi by 2, but it is around 3 pi by 2. Next, the intersection point will be around 5 pi by 2. Or we go from 0, it will be more closer to the odd multiple of pi by 2, right? So the intersection point will be alpha approaching to plus minus 3 pi by 2, plus minus 5 pi by 2, plus minus 7 pi by 2, and so on. So these alpha are the condition for maxima, where alpha equals to 0 will be the condition for principal maxima, right? Now we are done. We know the formula for intensity, we know the condition for minima, we know the condition for maxima. So let's plot intensity distribution. If you plot the intensity pattern, it will look like this. If you place a single slit in front of a plane wavefront, then you will find image like this on your screen. And here you can easily see it will consist of a bright region and then a dark, then bright. The center one is called principal maxima, Then we have around alpha equals to pi, we have a minima. Okay, so it will be a dark region. And then we have again intensity increased, so this will be the first maxima, then again second minima, then maxima, minima, and it's going on. Okay, this very center one is called principal maxima, and its amplitude will be equals to I naught, and we know the I naught is proportional to a square, that is square of slit width. So larger the slit will be, more will be the principal maxima intensity. This is first secondary maxima, and its intensity will be I1, which is approximately equals to, why it's approximately equals to, because 3 pi by 2 is not exact condition for first secondary maxima. Alpha is approaching to 3 pi by 2. So if you just substitute 3 pi by 2, it will be 4 upon 9 pi square I naught. And then if you look, this term 4 upon 9 pi square, this is much smaller compared to 1. Therefore, intensity of first secondary maxima is much smaller than intensity of principal maxima. Then we can get second secondary maxima, and you can easily guess that denominator is getting larger and larger. It is not very difficult to guess that after few secondary maxima you won't be able to observe anything, because the denominator will be such large that the secondary maxima we can neglect intensity, right? It will be approaching to dark region. Okay, this whole pattern is clear to us. On the screen you will able to see, because we are seeing the pattern due to a slit. Then you will find out a line strips. In center you will find the brighter strip, then dark region, then again strip which are less brighter compared to the central one, then the dark, then bright, then dark, and so on. That's how you can observe the intensity distribution on the screen. Now the one important problem related to this topic, effect of white light. Whole calculation we have done so far by considering that light was monochromatic, right? It consists of only one lambda. But what will happen if you use white light instead of that monochromatic light? White light consists of different wavelengths light, right? To understand it, let's remind ourselves, what is the condition for minima? The condition for minima was A sin theta equals to m lambda. Let's consider the first order dark band, that is m equals to 1. In that case, A sin theta equals to m lambda, and if theta is very small, then we can approximate sin theta is equals to theta. Therefore, we can calculate the value of theta, and theta will be lambda by A. So for any light, the first order minima will be appears at lambda by A. Okay, now from this relation it is very clear that theta for red light will be much larger than theta for violet light, because lambda, that is the wavelength of red light, is greater than wavelength of violet light, right? What it means? It means that the first order minima of red light will appear at a larger distance from the center as compared to the violet light. What will be the condition for principal maxima? Alpha equals to 0, which will lead us to theta equals to 0. Therefore, condition for principal maxima doesn't depend upon theta. For all light, principal maxima will form at same place. As a result, the central maxima will be white, right? However, the condition for other maxima will change due to change in theta. Therefore, other maxima will be colored type, where red maxima will be further apart from blue. So this is the 0th order central maxima, so it will be white. Then you will find out the first order maxima of violet light, and then for the other lights where first order maxima for the red light is further apart from the blue, right? So the only central maxima will be white, however other maxima will be colored. Okay, hope all these parts are clear to you. See you in the next lecture, where we will deal with Fraunhofer diffraction due to double slit. Thank you for listening.